21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
You ready to get $3 million in infrastructure for free to offer an Amazon-like experience for your business? In this episode, we're going to dive deep into how you can up-level your business and offer Amazon-like experiences. My name is Van Tucker. I'm the VP of Technology Partnerships at Harbor Lockers by Luxor One. For my entire life, I've been building digital technology platforms since I was actually in middle school. And today, I'm building commerce technology and really love working with entrepreneurs and bringing ideas to life, from small entrepreneurs that started in their first business idea to some of the entrepreneurs at world-class organizations. The big picture vision is to build the world's largest locker network, which enables anyone to access solutions on demand. If you're from the United States, you may be saying, what's a locker and what you can use it for? So Amazon lockers are the typical experience you see. You can go to order something online and deliver it at a nearby Amazon locker. Or you may live in a multi-family apartment building where you have packages delivered. Well, where the future is going, we see lockers as connecting the physical internet. So what that mean by that is you can order something online, you can have an item delivered to the locker to pick up, and it's not just items. You can use them for a lot of other things for local commerce. For example, we work with a baker, which uses the lockers to disperse bread to his customers. What they do is they go on WhatsApp. They say, "Hey, we got some new bread we're cooking. Come and order it for you." And then what they do is they say on Friday, we have a cutoff time where you can order the bread. And on Saturday, they go drop it off in the locker, and then individuals can pick it up at any time through the locker. And that what makes it super easy for this bread baker is, instead of standing and waiting for his customers to meet up in a parking lot or in front of like Whole Foods, he can just go drop it off in the locker. The customers can come pick it up at any time at their convenience. It's a win-win for them. It's a saving time for the entrepreneur. Instead of waiting for their customers and kind of waiting for them to meet up face to face, they can, and it's also a win for the customer. They can pick up their order when it's convenient as well. Building any type of new product is difficult. You're going through different stages. Like, hey, you have this idea, and when you're in the idea stage, you have nothing even launched. You may not have you just say, hey, I want this idea to build anything you have. So one of the big philosophies is, how do you take your idea and get in the field fast as you can? So how do you pilot it, get some early customer feedback to really validate, hey, is this something there's actually stickiness? Because that's how you get real feedback on building products and businesses, is actually from the customer. So you want to get your idea in your product in your customers fast as you can. And sometimes that's uncomfortable, for sure. Like, you may be launching something that is not really something you're proud of. You may be like, man, this thing has been thrown together kind of with duct tape. And that's what we kind of did when we built these lockers. How do we get the lockers an MVP, and maybe even less than MVP solution? And more, you maybe just like going out and standing in front of the street with a clipboard, and getting that customer feedback and doing customer surveys. And what we did, we built the locker solution. We built many products in the past. So I've built things and spent year, 6 months building something, and then you launch it and you're like, it's crickets. Like, why did we put all this energy into building something and be like, oh, that was a waste of time and money, and the customers didn't even want it, or they may wanted something totally different. What we did with the lockers, we found, like, hey, let's start a pilot market. How do we find a more rural area, actually next to me in my hometown? So we launched it in Chico, California. We got 5 lockers. We built a proof of concept business called Drop Locker. This was actually not our core business. This was more of a a marketing go-to-market tool where we actually act like our own customer. We became the entrepreneur. Instead of us building this locker network and working with other people, we actually built our own solution and the solution was, hey, we let people store things in the locker. We did our own marketing. We went and talked to entrepreneurs and got traction on it. And a couple of things came out of that. One is it helped us stabilize our product. One thing, because when we launched it, the product wasn't fully developed. We actually launched it early. And that's one thing I'm a big fan of. How do you launch products early? You don't want to have an unfunctional product, number one, because that could hurt your reputation. So how do you get the bare minimal functional product to do the bare fundamentals? And that's for us was just storing the item in the locker. And then one thing we learned is we put one of the lockers in a downtown center next to a nightclub. And this was a nightclub where at nighttime it's a nightclub and the daytime is actually a restaurant. And at the nightclub, they don't let you bring things into the locker. They have a policy for security. You can't bring your bags, you can't bring any knives or any type of items into the club. So they started using this locker for bag storage, where, hey, we wanted to use the locker for bag storage. And this is something like, oh, we thought that was maybe an idea, but it actually got a lot of traction. So what happened is we came into this idea, hey, we're going to start this proof of concept app called Drop Locker on top of our solution. We actually got an idea. It's like, wow, this bag policies at sports venues, for example. So we took this idea of our pilot market at a nightclub and took it to the next level. Let's go find a stadium where we can put the locker out in front of and solve that problem. When you go to a concert or a music venue, we can solve it. So that we took to the next level of the pilot. It's like, hey, do we have anyone in our network where there's a stadium and then there was one, so we then piloted it there, and then it's like, oh, that got traction. Next thing, we now expanded this idea of drop locker into a standalone business outside of what our network is, but they're using all of our locker technology. But now that is now becoming one of the number one sports venue bag storage solutions out of this little skunk work thing we did. But we didn't go into it thinking, oh man, we're going to start a bag venue business or a product. This is the thing that we find is when you go out there and just launch things, try to solve problems from your customers. That's what you need to do. Is like, how do you solve a problem that your customers actually have? And that's what we found by putting these lockers out, talking to customers and solving problems that we never really had of when we were just planning. Because the initial idea was, let's build a locker solution. Let's use it for packages or peer-to-peer exchange for Facebook marketplaces or other ideas. And what we're finding is some of the most traction people are getting is these non-traditional use cases of the lockers. That could be bag storage, the bread use case of selling bread through local entrepreneurs. Another great one is even just doing product sampling and giveaways through the lockers. That's what makes it really exciting is when you start talking to your customers and start thinking of creative ways to make your unit economics work. Of course, solving problems with deliveries, porch piracy is the premise of, hey, the problem we're trying to solve. But one thing we ran into is integrating lockers into the major carriers is very difficult, because in order to have item being delivered to the lockers for porch piracy, so meaning instead of having a package delivered at your step, have it to a nearby locker. The major carriers need a network. That's the problem you have. It's like, hey, oh, I want Amazon delivered, I want UPS delivered, I want FedEx delivered. But in order to do that, you need to have thousands of lockers across the whole United States. So for us is, how do you start your idea and get the momentum going? And that's where these unique business opportunities came up as the flywheel is growing. So for entrepreneurs and people building product, that's the main thing, is how do you get your early traction to actually make a sustainable business? To then you always have this grand vision, we want, to build the world's largest locker network and empower that. And that is the grand vision that you have, and that gets you excited to wake up in the morning. but sometimes, find those little nuggets of opportunity to get your early traction. And that's what thing is gets me super excited is getting that early traction, getting rolling up your sleeves, building product, and then kind of growing it from there. So as we've been developing the platform, and we built a very complex and customizable platform. And we did that on purpose. We wanted to be a tech-centric platform to work with to really power some of the world's greatest technology companies. So with that, we built this very flexible thing. And that's one thing you build your business. You want to be flexible in your opportunities because you don't know what's coming towards you for the to solve the problem. So one problem that we found in a solution that came out too is, Waymo, the self-driving car company. You got robots driving around the cars. A problem that happens a lot, is lost and found. People leave things in these cars when they're um, taking it just like a regular taxi. And then we got the opportunity to, with Waymo, Waymo came to us, say, hey, we saw you built this really cool locker technology. How can we use them for lost and found to put these items in lost and found? So what in the key, that's another opportunity came up. It's like, oh, our lockers can be used for lost and found pickup. So now we have lockers used by Waymo in 5 different cities around the United States where people can lose things in their cars. Waymo then puts them in these lockers and where people can pick them up at their convenience. And that's a whole other thing where for us is really just empowering these great locker experiences and trying to solve problems. And that is where with us, anytime you work with a business is solving problems every day. That's what I wake up for. How do we solve a problem? And then how do you solve it in a way that makes it very easy for the end user? So that's another little example of a story I wanted to share is like how, all these different use cases and things gets us really excited. Everything takes a little bit longer than you expect when you build a business. Sometimes you get these rapid growths you see online, especially like thought leaders on Twitter and on social media, YouTube, like, oh man, it went from 0 to 100 so fast. That is not typically the story of a business being grown. There is edge cases where things go 0 to 100 very quickly. Typically, organic growth is the best way to go. You could often put jet fuel into building a business, but often when you put jet fuel in a business, there's an early stage by like raising VC capital or growing too quickly, you can actually break your business down by doing unsustainable tactics and habits on growth. So when we built Harbor, we've been very blessed to be part of a much larger organization. So with that being um, part of a larger organization that did bring in capital to grow, but the way that we built Harbor was not, yes, we do have the financing side brought in through our internal partner to grow the business, which is Luxor One and Asa Abloy, but we built Harbor to run very similar to a very independently built company, meaning we build things in a side, just if you're going to start my business myself. So with that being said, we have a very lean team. How do we keep our product team very lean? How do we do growth in a very organic way? Instead of just waking up, hey, let's go put 500 lockers around the country one day, we actually say, hey, how do we start with 5, 10, 20, 50, 100? Finding partners to work with how we do this growth. But the problem you often have is we're in a double-sided marketplace, meaning when we work with individuals, we need to have lockers deployed for some of the larger, for people to use across the country. So say if you're Amazon, UPS, one of the major carriers, if they want to work with us, we need to have network coverage. But also so for us, it's always been this balancing act, how do you get enough lockers deployed to also have enough location. So when someone wants to use a locker, they have one near them. And this is a very common problem you see like on any double-edged marketplace. So, for example, Airbnb, they need to have rentals for people to rent, but they also need renters. They want to rent and stay in the places. Same thing with Uber. They can't have too many Uber drivers. Unless they also need riders to ride the Uber side. So for us, this double-edged marketplace has been an art, is an art that's still being refined today, is how do we put the lockers out in the right cities, the right spot. And that's where today we are in over 80 cities, but that did not happen in day year one. We're about in year four of this now, 4 years into it. But, we had now have 500 lockers deployed. If you talk to us about 3 years ago, like, oh, we want 20,000 lockers by this time, now we have 500, but, we still are on that journey. We do, especially being an early adopter, and if you're an early adopter in any industry, sometimes you have the educational part of your problem, how it's even what lockers are, what problem you're doing. So for us is the growth journey has been takes longer than expected, but also running very lean. You could do a higher growth channel, burn more money to get that unorganic growth, and then try to backfill it in with the sales, or you can do an organic model of growth. So again, it just kind of depends where you are as a company, what type of risk you want to have. I'm a big fan of bootstrapped sustainable business models. How do you build something to built to last, not just build something built to maybe get successful? So, that's one thing. The way I kind of look at entrepreneurship is, try to solve a problem, try to build a sustainable business to do the problem. It's better to have a business that can last for years and has to be self-sustainable with cash flow versus building a business for 5 years, burn it, and then next thing you have to close it down. You hurt your reputation as an individual because you built something, you have to get customers, hey, we're not doing this anymore, and then you hurt, people have built it into their daily lives. It's better to build something that can be compounding, it's like compounding interest, build something, keep compounding, building, building, building each year, each month, each day, and let that compound build over time. Building a company is an art form, and it's something that you can't really just go open a book and say, hey, let's go build this product concept. And a lot of that comes down to like team dynamics. How do you build a team that can actually help execute your vision together? So, typically, I'm very passionate about what I do, and how do we actually get excited and wake up in the morning and say, hey, I'm gonna go do fight the battles of the world. And next thing is, how do you build a culture of team and associate yourself with people that can really bring each other up? So, you know, and that's one thing, when you hire individuals to work with you, how do you actually have them match like initially when I first started business, I started a creative agency where we were doing a lot of marketing, website development for a lot of local businesses. And that's how I kind of got started. I was like, hey, uh, people started saying, Van, you can build this, build that, build this. I'm like, yeah, I can build this, build that. Next thing you know, I started a business with one of my high school friends. We went right out of college, and we started a marketing technology agency, and organically off word of mouth, people started saying, hey, how can you start doing these solutions? Next thing you know, we had to hire people. Hiring people is sometimes the hardest thing to build a business. How do you bring talent in? And often if you're the founder of a company, how do you bring people in that are better than you? And then sometimes it's very difficult to find those individuals, like especially if you're really passionate, working 100 hours a week, how do you find individuals to match with it? And that's one thing that is difficult when you hire in a team, is like realigning those expectations. It's like there is people that, when they come to work, they are 100% fine working from 8 to 5, and there's nothing wrong with that, if that's what their business they're in. But one thing is, how do you, when you find those individuals, how do you during that 8 to 5 time, there's nothing wrong with some individuals. Hey, they want work and life balance. Not everyone's crazy that wants to work 100 hours a week or 80 hours a week. You know, uh, and there's 8 to 5 people you want to, when you bring the team in, making sure they're experts in their subject domain, especially as a founder or an entrepreneur, you're kind of a generalist often. You could be you could be the accountant, you can be the product designer, the salesperson, the growth marketer, all the things involved as being an entrepreneur. So when you start hiring individuals, you're going to start taking those little buckets of things that you may not be great at. And that's where that could be programming, for example. One thing you can become a programmer, but most likely if that's not your superpower, you may want to outsource, hire a programmer. And then a good way to start hiring people is using contractors at first. Hiring someone is a big risk, hiring, especially an employee, they're going to go, employee, you don't want to hire someone and say, oh man, that didn't work out. That's like someone's life. So when you first start hiring, building your business or even like working for a company and you want to start building a new product, it's often easier to say, hey, how can I go hire some contractors or like a freelancer to be a designer or a developer to build that MVP product? You don't need to build a full team of employees to start your initial product traction. So the best way to do is when you start a business or an idea, go find some contractors to fill in those gaps that you can help build your initial product and get initial traction. And then once you actually start get that traction, start bringing people in to take in those roles to start accelerating your product development. And also when you hire people, a lot of them are very subject domain experts that are better than you. And that could be making your product better, making your taking things off your plate like that you can then focus on your superpowers. So that's one thing that the dynamics is, don't get too worried about, hiring people at the early stage. I'd recommend, how to use tools like through a network of freelancers, and there's also platforms out there that you can go in and find contractors on. Like Upwork is a great, fantastic platform for someone that wants to go hire a computer programmer, a copywriter, or things like that. And then also you have like Fiverr that can be used for a design resource. Those platforms, and then the power of AI has been amazing. So, entrepreneurs in this day and age, if you have an idea and you want to build something, you can even do this on the side. You can open up a Claude and start building tools. You can start using Cursor to develop an application like an MVP to get traction on. And there's like YouTube videos that show you how to do it. And you don't even need YouTube. You can use Chat GPT and it can walk you through it. So this day and age, starting an idea or building a product has been significantly easier than it was 10 years ago. But, a lot of that stuff, it just takes time to figure it out. And also you can use these tools as your guide as well. So that's one thing. These tools and technology aren't going to replace people. There's always going to be people that need to kind of use these. You're still going to have to work with people. It's not going to be this day and age where, hey, I'm going to have no team, but teams are running much more lean than they used to. And it's the thing that I got more involved in as I kind of like got mature and built more things is you build like you help define like your core values of what you do as a company. And those really are become your guiding force when you have good core values. And each company could have different type of core values. Core values is, you could have being customer obsessed, being agile, respond rapidly, and all these different things. And those are ways you need to define your core values. When you're going through the interview phase of a contractor, even, you can even like just mark that down. Like if one of your core values is responding rapidly and the person's not responding very rapidly to the chat messages or emails or communication during the hiring process, that may not be a good candidate for you if that's one of your core values of responding rapidly and they're not responding rapidly early on. Most likely that's not going to change once they get hired or join your team. So that'd be one thing I would recommend, sitting down and creating your core values. And that does take a little time to kind of map out, but that helps you bring in the right people that you work with and kind of have everyone guide as your guiding force. And that's something that not all the moving forward, anything I do is like how do you define your core values and your mission, and then even not just with employees, it's with your contractors and even like your first customers you work with. When you get a customer, depending on what type of business you're doing, it's like a relationship. Unless you're selling transactional items, like you're selling a widget, and it's like, oh, you're buying this widget for $5 and then moving on from the $5. If you're in the service business or in a long-term customer where they're a repeat customer, building your ideal customer profile, who your customer is, and also making sure those customers, your early stage customers, match your core values. Because if you compromise on it, even though you may need the money, sometimes if you find that wrong culture match, someone that is not really aligning with the culture and value, it could hurt the customer. You're most likely to have a bad customer experience, meaning that they're not going to be happy working with you. And then also, um, they're going to go tell other people about it. So it's a bad reputation thing. It's going to be a waterfall. Then also drains the energy to your company, your employees, or yourself if you have a bad culture fit with your customers. So that's one thing when it comes down to, it's not just about your employees, your contractors. It's also getting the right customers that match you as well. And if you get all that together, those pieces put together, it really makes a better working environment to strive on and really brings everything up together as you kind of build your platforms. If this is something that you're want to dive more into and kind of learn how you can make it easier to get things asynchronously with your customers, or if you have a business idea, you think, oh man, I want to build a business on top of this locker network, feel free to reach out to me. You can find me directly on LinkedIn. Just search for Van Tucker. You'll see me there. Also, you go to harborlockers.com. You can hit start for free. You can kind of start diving in and kind of playing around with the locker platform. There's even a map where you can see locker locations near you. If you're in the United States, there's a very high chance we have a locker, within a couple miles away that you can go around and play with. So super excited to kind of learn more what you're building, and thanks for having me on here today.
21st Century Entrepreneurship with Martin Piskarik.
Imagine a space where triumphs, trials, and tales of entrepreneurship come alive. Welcome to the 21st Century Entrepreneurship Podcast, a gold awarded journey hosted by Martin Piskarik, connecting with listeners in 95 countries and ranking in the top 0.5% of all podcasts. Join our exclusive community, elevate your perspective, and embark on the path to success.